Midnight in the Caribbean. A 32-foot go-fast boat suddenly appears on radar, cutting across black water at more than 50 knots. No navigation lights, no radio calls, just raw speed, driving straight toward the USS George Washington, a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier on patrol with its strike group. For the crew, there is no mistaking the danger. Carriers operate under constant threat, and every unidentified contact is treated as hostile until proven otherwise. One small vessel can carry explosives powerful enough to cripple a warship. The memory of past attacks on U.S. ships makes the stakes brutally clear. Within minutes, the distance between the speedboat and the carrier shrinks. Escorts move first. Destroyers tighten formation. Sensors track every movement. Pilots race to their helicopters. Over the radio, warnings are broadcast in English and Spanish. No reply. Only the roar of engines cutting through the waves. At that moment, what looked like a simple smuggling run has escalated into a potential strike against America's most valuable naval asset in the region. The next decisions will determine whether this encounter ends in surrender or in sudden fire. Midnight in the Caribbean. A 32-foot go-fast boat suddenly appears on radar, cutting across black water. Stay with us and make sure to subscribe to Military Power for the full story of how the Navy turned a midnight approach into a show of strength. Cartel go-fast boats are no ordinary fishing vessels. They are built with one purpose: to outrun, outmaneuver, and outwit pursuit. Hulls are reinforced with lightweight fiberglass, engines upgraded far beyond civilian standards, often packing 3 or 4 outboard motors that push them past 55 or even 60 knots. Their low profile makes them hard to spot on radar, while the narrow beam and sharp hull design allow sudden turns that can leave heavier patrol ships struggling to keep pace. In darkness, running without lights, they become little more than shadows on the water, designed to slip between the cracks of surveillance. To the cartels, speed and stealth are the perfect gamble. Each boat is a billion-dollar bet. If it makes it through the blockade, the cocaine packed inside can flood markets and generate profits on a staggering scale. That is why crews are willing to take extreme risks, believing that agility and daring might outpace even the Navy's layers of defense. In their minds, the ocean is wide, the night is dark, and the hunters can be fooled. But to race straight toward a U.S. carrier strike group is something else entirely. It is not just smuggling, it is provocation, a dare to the most powerful Navy in the world. And that raises a chilling question. When a silent speck on radar ignores every rule of the sea and charges directly at America's most guarded asset, how will the Navy respond? As the night deepened in Caribbean waters, the destroyer USS Mason picked up a blip on radar. The signal came steady, creeping closer. What stood out wasn't speed. Many vessels could move fast, but the silence. No radio transmission, no call sign. Only that one radar echo inching ever closer to the USS George Washington strike group. Mason's mission that night was clear: monitor all surface threats, assist the carrier's layered defense, and respond to anything that pushes too close. As that unspecified go-fast boat closed in, it violated a cardinal rule of naval engagement. When an unidentified vessel approaches a carrier without responding to warnings, it is presumed hostile until proven otherwise. In naval operations, there's zero tolerance for surprises. Carriers sail with an invisible bubble of protection, enforced by escort ships and aerial assets. Anything that violates that bubble triggers escalation. In past naval doctrines, vessels under radar detection but refusing to comply have often been intercepted, turned away, or, in worst case, engaged. The rules of engagement set strict thresholds: warnings first, then use of non-lethal measures, and if necessary, force. That go-fast boat had stepped into a zone where caution shifts instantly to confrontation. In those few minutes, radar operators, combat information centers, and bridge officers on Mason and the carrier all tracked speed, course, and trajectory. The unknown small boat had no transponder. No response to radio hails. As it raced toward the carrier's outer ring, every tactical sensor lit up. The path it took was straight, unwavering, no deviation, no evasive move. From the deck of the carrier, officers watched the closing distance with alarm. A vessel that size is a poor match against a carrier in a head-on collision, but that's not the point. A small boat can carry bombs or trigger chain reactions in wartime scenarios. Allowing it to close unchallenged is not an option for a U.S. Navy task force. Still, aboard the carrier and its escorts, no one assumed this was just a reckless smuggler out testing limits. The behavior matched more than simple smuggling. Refusal to respond, direct heading toward protected zones, all under cover of silence. If this were cartel business, it was bold. If it were something worse, it was a potential act of sabotage or terror. As tension built, lookouts searched the horizon. Pilots readied helicopters, sonar and radar tracks locked in. Every second the boat closed, pressure built. In the Combat Information Center aboard Mason, watch officers debated whether to activate more aggressive measures, laser designators, aerial overflights, or boarding teams in RHIBS. All these options stood on the edge of escalation. And yet, even in that heightening drama, no one on the deck believed that this small, sleek craft was just the handiwork of a lone daredevil. The patterns matched known tactics used by cartel smugglers testing naval perimeters. The U.S. Navy had seen this behavior before vessels probing defenses, gauging tolerance, trying to push boundaries under darkness. But those probes typically stopped before crossing a red line. This one had no sign of stopping. At that moment, the standoff entered a critical phase. The small vessel, silent and straight, was about to cross lines that no one allows to be crossed. Behind radar screens and consoles, crews held breath. It was not yet confrontation, but everything pointed toward the possibility. The operating doctrine is clear. Respond firmly to attempts at encroachment, especially near a carrier. In short, that go-fast boat had just declared by its actions that it considered the carrier's defenses testable. And that is more than audacity, it is a provocation. With the small boat ignoring every hail and closing fast, the tension on deck reached breaking point. So what measures would the U.S. Navy unleash to stop it before the unthinkable happened? The moment the speedboat crossed into restricted waters, the U.S. Navy's response switched gears. Radio operators on the destroyer and carrier began broadcasting urgent warnings over multiple channels, in English and in Spanish, anticipating the possibility of Latin American crews. Alter course, stop engines, identify yourselves. Those messages aired repeatedly, but silence answered them. No crackle in response, no radio chatter picked up. The vessel remained a ghost, communicating only through its forward momentum. As minutes passed, the Navy escalated to visible deterrence. 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters roared off the carrier, climbing into the night sky. Their mission? Hover above the target, monitor, and impose unmistakable pressure. From high above, each Seahawk deployed loudspeakers, broadcasting commands to change direction and stop. The pilots were also ordered to sweep laser designator beams green, low-power lasers meant to dazzle or warn, not injure. Such laser signaling is considered a non-lethal warning method in naval practice. The use of a green laser to visually mark a target or indicate intent is not new to naval operations, according to ABC News. U.S. Navy testing of laser weapons has also explored using lasers to dazzle or warn approaching speedboats. In effect, those beams offered a visible, unmistakable signal. You are being tracked. Do not proceed. The laser does not burn you. At that stage, it just forces awareness. But in a twist that jolts the narrative, the speedboat refused to budge. It pressed on, engines roaring undiminished, trajectory fixed, no evasive course, no slowing, no acknowledgement. Every warning went unheeded. From the perspective of the Navy, that silence amid active warnings is one of the most alarming signs possible. In naval doctrine, compliance to warnings is the thin line between escalation and confrontation. Inside the Seahawk cockpits, the pilots monitored video feeds and target tracking systems. They saw the boat, clearly its outline, wake, speed. They knew it had received the signals. The laser beams were visible in dark conditions, and the loudspeaker commands should have been heard. The failure to respond meant only one thing. The boat's crew intended to push as far as they could, testing the U.S. forces' thresholds. Meanwhile, back in the combat information centers and aboard the carrier bridge, tension spiked. Staff officers calculated timelines. How long before that speedboat would be dangerously close? Could a mistake or miscalculation trigger shots? Should the Navy risk overreaction? Every second mattered. The rules of engagement demanded that warnings precede action, but they also left limited patience for non-compliance. The scenario mirrored close-call intercepts recorded in news reports. Fast boats are often met first with radio hails, then visual signals, and finally escalation if they defy instructions. What set this incident apart was the level of refusal. The approach continued even after radio, loudspeaker, and laser interventions. In past instances, many smugglers or test vessels would reverse course once confronted by helicopters or warnings. This one did not. By now, the U.S. helicopters were locked overhead, observers tracking the speedboat's every turn. The destroyer and carrier were poised to take the next step. The non-response was a deliberate provocation. No one aboard sincerely believed the vessel was ignorant of protocol. It was asserting by action that it intended to push limits. In that silence, the Navy recognized the gravity. This was no random chase. It was a test of resolve, of capability, of deterrence. So the question hangs, how far will U.S. forces go before the next escalation? If radio, loudspeaker, and laser warnings all fail, what comes next? A board, a disabling shot, or worse? That decision would be the turning point between confrontation and control. As the speedboat kept closing, the margin for hesitation evaporated. The risk became stark. If that small craft penetrated deeper, the safety bubble around the USS George Washington would be breached. In naval operations, there is what officers call a kill chain, a timeline that shrinks rapidly when a suspicious target refuses to obey. The tension aboard the carrier strike group soared, with seconds stretching like hours. On the destroyer USS Mason, Coast Guard boarding teams stood by, ready to launch an RHIBS. These fast, agile boats are ideal for close-in operations, designed for boarding and interception. With aerial overwatch from the Seahawk helicopters above, the RHIBs surged outward, cutting through the water under starlight, closing in on the target. The whole network was now active. Sea, air, ship, a synchronized machine of interdiction. Inside the carrier's Combat Information Center and Mason's Bridge, officers weighed the options. The go-fast boat had ignored radio hails, loudspeaker commands, and laser warnings. It remained fixed on its path. Under doctrine, when non-lethal measures fail and a threat continues toward a high-value asset, the decision may pivot to more direct action. But opening fire carries enormous risk: misidentification, collateral damage, escalation, or worse. In those crucible moments, every sensor, every feed, every data point counted. The boat's speed, heading, wake signature, any variations all parsed by human eyes and automated systems. The pilots above tracked it from two angles. The RHIB teams prepared boarding gear, safety lines, small arms, and close quarters tactics. The chain of command waited for the go-ahead. The moment of decision arrived. The bridge officers gave the order to interdict. The RHIBs launched at full throttle, cutting off possible escape routes. Simultaneously, the helicopters descended to lower altitude to visually mark the target, ready to escalate further if needed. All eyes were on that little boat, now a test of resolve. Yet what makes this particular incident shock the keel is the restraint exercised. No shots rang out. Instead, the presence of multiple converging assets, the precise timing of the intercept, and the overwhelming show of force were enough. The boat's crew, realizing the net was closing from front, flanks, and above, had nowhere safe to flee. From the vantage of that small vessel, the situation must have seemed like being surrounded by ghosts. Dark waters, engines everywhere, helicopters looming overhead, RHIBS closing in fast. Their options narrowed until only one remained: surrender. When the RHIBs came within hailing distance, the crew finally raised hands, engines idle. Boarding teams clambered aboard, carefully but assertively gaining control without lethal engagement. By the time that little craft was brought under control, it had tried to push boundaries, cross forbidden lines, and challenge a carrier group's defenses. The U.S. Navy and Coast Guard, executing under the strictest rules, had turned a potentially violent confrontation into a tactical interception. The decision to act, launching RHIBS, deploying helicopters, coordinating across platforms, showed not only capability, but disciplined restraint. That moment, precariously perched between warning and combat, was a turning point. It demonstrated that in naval power projection, the hardest victories are often those won without a shot fired. The ability to escalate and then choose not to is part of what deters future challengers. With the Navy's interception tightening like a net, one final question hung in the air. When the boarding teams stormed the boat, what exactly would they find hidden inside? When the RHIBs finally closed the distance, the moment of truth arrived. The small boat's engines slowed, its wake sputtered, and the crew raised their arms hands visible in the moonlight, acknowledging defeat. That simple gesture, in that moment, dissolved the tension taut across sea and sky. The U.S. Coast Guard and Navy boarding teams wasted no time, leaping aboard that sleek craft, and they moved fast but with precision, securing the vessel without firing a single shot. Inside, the dynamics were tense but controlled. Boarding officers shouted commands, instructing crew to lie down, show evidence, and surrender any weapons. Within minutes, the Americans had full control over the bridge, engine room, and compartments. The silent infiltration, no gunfire, no resistance, spoke volumes. This was interception, done with military discipline. Then came the search. Sailors and Coast Guard agents opened hatch after hatch, scanning for hidden compartments, false walls, and cargo holds built exactly for secrecy. In one corner, they uncovered wrapped bundles, kilogram-sized blocks encased in nylon sheeting. The stench of nylon plastic and chemicals filled the air. Field tests were initiated on the spot. A quick kit turned the first blocks bright red, indicating a positive for cocaine. Additional tests confirmed it. The boarding party radioed up. Multiple packages, weight pending, positive for narcotics. What initially looked like a reckless speedboat run was in fact a high-stakes cartel shipment worth millions. The carrier group and arresting forces estimated the haul hundreds of kilograms in street value terms, a blow to the cartel's supply line. The twist here is profound. That unassuming vessel, that risky approach, had been carrying contraband at cartel scale. The audacity to approach a U.S. carrier with such cargo is a message in itself. Throughout the seizure, the boarding teams cataloged serial numbers, photographed the bundles, interviewed the crew, and locked down evidence. The crew, now detained on deck, were read their rights and transferred to secure custody. The operational tempo remained high. Helicopters circled overhead, destroyers monitored radar for other vessels, and the carrier systems stayed vigilant. No loose ends allowed. The unexpected cargo changed the game. What had begun as a maritime provocation revealed itself to be a billion-dollar gamble by a cartel. The confrontation never needed violence because the overwhelming presence and coordination of U.S. assets forced surrender. The seizure itself, hundreds of kilograms of narcotics, was a tactical and symbolic victory. The message sent: not only can the Navy prevent threats from closing in on its carriers, but it can also intercept drug shipments far closer to critical assets than cartel operators might imagine. The line between interdiction and combat grows thinner with each test. The discovery of hundreds of kilos of narcotics was shocking enough, but it raised a deeper issue. Beyond this single seizure, what does such an audacious move reveal about the wider battle for control in the Caribbean? This high-stakes encounter doesn't stand alone. It belongs to a larger tapestry unfolding over the Caribbean, where cartels have increasingly challenged U.S. maritime dominance. In recent years, the region has become a testing ground, fast boats darting across sea lanes, cartel networks pushing further out, seeking to evade coastal patrols. The U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, and allied partners have responded by reinforcing presence, increasing patrols, and treating maritime drug routes as contested zones rather than backwaters. Indeed, official deployments in 2025 saw 8 U.S. warships dispatched to the Caribbean for enhanced counter-cartel missions. Why would a seemingly powerless skiff matter? Because in naval logic, proximity is leverage. A small boat, seemingly insignificant, can carry a destructive payload. Imagine a suicide bomber strapped to explosives, intentionally steered toward the hull of a carrier or one of its escorts. Or picture an ambush, timed missile fire, or sabotage at close range. When a vessel unannounced closes in under darkness, it may be testing defenses, probing rules of engagement, or creating chaos. The potential lies not in its size, but in what it could carry and when it dares to strike. What saved the day was discipline. The U.S. forces refused to rush. Every warning had to be made, every escalation measured, every option weighed. That restraint itself becomes a message that strength does not lie in reflexive violence, but in calculated superiority. The cartel saw a chance, tried to push the boundary, and backed off when they realized the net was too tight. The Navy and Coast Guard showed they could respond firmly, yet cleanly, without error. This incident is emblematic. It sends a signal not just to that cartel, but to any adversary who believes they can slip by at night. The message, no vessel, however small, may trespass unchallenged. Over time, each successful interception strengthens deterrence. It reshapes the cost-benefit calculation for traffickers. It underlines a core principle. Power projection is not about brute firepower alone, but about disciplined command and control in moments of crisis. Yet this is only one brushstroke in a vast sea of testing. The cartel networks will try again: smaller boats, different tactics, new routes. And from that perspective, every interception becomes a rehearsal, every standoff a question. How much will the U.S. tolerate? How soon will force be used? How visible must deterrence be? In closing, this confrontation may seem remote, distant, tied to the seas, but its effects reach far inland. It protects the safety of carriers, preserves strategic assets, and asserts that U.S. naval power is not symbolic. It is functional, responsive, and always watching. The open question remains: will the cartels ever learn their lesson? Or will one day they try something that overwhelms even this disciplined response? Because every time a skiff ventures too close, the Navy is watching and waiting. From the first radar contact to the final boarding, the operation unfolded like a textbook example of naval precision. The destroyer USS Mason spotted the threat. The carrier strike group escalated warnings. Helicopters moved in overhead, and Coast Guard teams surged forward. Every layer of defense played its part, and in the end, not a single shot had to be fired. The threat was neutralized, the crew detained, and hundreds of kilograms of narcotics were seized. The entire system, air, sea, and command, functioned exactly as it was designed to. What makes this remarkable is not only the discipline on display, but also the message it sends. A carrier group is the centerpiece of American power at sea, and yet even the smallest vessel approaching it is taken seriously. This speedboat, at first just a blip on radar, revealed itself to be a cartel shipment worth millions. Its interception underlines how the Caribbean has become more than a smuggling lane. It is a testing ground where traffickers measure U.S. resolve. So what do you think? Are these encounters just the beginning of bigger tests at sea? Share your thoughts below, and make sure to subscribe to Military Power for more untold stories of strategy, technology, and the hidden battles shaping our world.